What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of The Lawyer You Know. It's been a second, but we are going to give some major updates in the Brian Kohberger case as things are happening. And it's really interesting. And I'm wondering why this stuff was sealed in the first place, why it's coming out now. We'll talk about that. We'll answer your questions around the 911 calls, the text messages, the motion to strike the death penalty based on the autism report from Kohberger's team. We're going to hear from some of the victims' family members and lawyers talking about what they think about this evidence coming out now. There's so much to get to, so much the defense is doing, so much the judge is doing. So let's get to it now. So we are going to break this down in a way that I'm going to kind of summarize some of it because there's a lot of documents that have been filed, a lot of things to talk about. We are going to read some snippets of certain documents. We are going to read the 911 call transcript from the surviving roommates, and we are going to read the text message exchange from the surviving roommates. And then we're going to watch a clip of the Goncalves family lawyer and father talking with Brian Enton about what they think about the fact that the text messages and the 911 calls are now unredacted, which to me in the first place, I understand why you want to redact information to protect people. I understand how people were running with their surviving roommates have some kind of wrongdoing in here. We'll get to whether or not the 911 calls and text messages shed light on that. But the judge found at this point, it's going to come out of trial anyways. It's going to be public. Why are we still redacting this? And I appreciate that from Judge Hippler saying this is a public trial and we are going to have the access to the information in the public eye unless something actually needs to be sealed. Because we have a lot of issues going on in a lot of these cases where things can snowball and we don't want that to happen, but we want to make sure we protect public access. And the fact that that's in a judge's mind to me is important and is a really good thing going forward. Now, some people are not going to like Hippler. I think he's much tougher on the defense than Judge was, but he's not somebody that's hiding from the public eye, at least this point. I don't feel like we're getting that from him. Okay, so let's get into some of these discussions. And the first one I want to talk about is the new information. I don't even think I mentioned this off the top, and it's the first thing I'm going to talk about. The DNA that was found under the fingernails of, I believe it was Maddie Mogan. Now I'm starting to doubt myself there. One of the victims. I get all these victims' names gets twisted up into my head. But the fingernail, under the fingernails of one of the victims, 3 sets of DNA. And basically, we don't know whose DNA it is. It could be Maddie's own DNA. It could be the other roommate's DNA. It could be a friend's DNA. It could be a boyfriend's DNA. It could be family's DNA. It could be Kohberger's DNA. According to the state, it could be Kohberger's DNA because the state says they tested it and it came back inconclusive. And the fact that it came back inconclusive is something that the state told the grand jury. And thank you, everybody, confirming it's Maddie. I know you guys have my back. And I try to get that right, or I try to say one of the victims. I really try not to mess that up because obviously that's insensitive and horrible. But I read so many documents in this case and in Reed over the weekend that stuff starts twisting together. But so the state wants to testify at trial that they tested the DNA and it's inconclusive, which basically means it could have been Brian Kohberger, right? And I promise you, based on me speaking to jurors and you guys have heard from jurors, there will be some jurors that are like, oh, so it could have been Brian Kohberger's. Okay, let's go. And if they believe that Brian Kohberger's DNA is found on the sheath, you can understand how they would be like, okay, it was on the sheath. It was also here. But the defense is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's totally inappropriate. They should not be able to testify to that. In fact, we have our own expert that tested it and said it was conclusively not Brian Kohberger's DNA. And because we have that expert testimony, the state should not be able to put somebody up there as an expert and say, it might be. That's important. And from my perspective, the defense, regardless of what the judge's decision is, this is going to be something that they absolutely hammer home. Even if the state puts up an expert says that's inconclusive, but they're going to say it's conclusive on the sheet, right? And if it's conclusive on the sheath, then why couldn't you make it conclusive on this? And if that person's on the stand, I'll say, so you say, to the 1 quadrillionth, it could be somebody else other than Brian Kohberger, which is like all these numbers. That is, it's absolutely Brian Kohberger on the sheath, but you can't say that on the fingernails, right? But you're still trying to sit here and tell this jury it might be Brian Kohberger. Well, that sounds like your testing is not very accurate. Sounds like your testing is not very reliable. The defense is going to hammer this expert. And the defense is going to put on their own expert to say conclusively this was not Brian Kohberger. Now, is that defense expert also going to say the sheath is conclusively not Brian Kohberger? I don't know, because we don't know exactly what the experts are going to say in this case. All of these updates, by the way, that we're giving today are what I've had in my mind and what I've been trying to tell everybody. There's so much we don't know about in this case. There's so much that when we listen to the trial, we're going to be like, oh, that's what was redacted, or that's what we didn't hear about, or that's what they were complaining about in the grand jury proceeding. That's going to happen a lot in this case. So what's Judge Hippler going to do? Is he going to allow the state to put somebody up there on the stand and say they tested it and it is inconclusive, that it is not conclusively not Brian Kohberger? He's definitely not going to let him say it is Brian Kohberger. Obviously, the state's not going to try to do that because that's not what the testing says. If I had to guess, which that's what I'm kind of here for, right? I think Judge Hippler is going to allow the state to put their expert up and say the testing was inconclusive. Now, how bad is that, right? And is it horrible of Judge Hippler to do that? I would say it is frustrating and annoying to me as a cop thing. It is such a cop thing to say our testing is so great that this is for sure his DNA over here, but over here we're going to say inconclusive as opposed to saying it's not him. And that it annoys me that the cops and that the state even tries to put that stuff forward. But in Judge Hippler's position as a gatekeeper to determine whether an expert can testify to something like this, it's probably the right call to allow the expert to say it was inconclusive, because the expert's the one that did the test. The expert's the one that's going to determine whether it is or is not conclusive. And if it's not conclusive and that's the result of the test, you kind of have to let the expert testify that it was inconclusive. You can't tell the expert to say it's not Brian Kohberger. And the defense will be able to deal with that on cross. That's my guess of how it plays out. We'll see. Yeah, there were a lot of things they wanted struck from the evidence or not allowed to be discussed, like bushy eyebrows and psychopath and things like that. I don't have time to really get into every single one of those because, again, we try to keep this to an hour, and there's a lot of other things I want to get to. Next is the death penalty. The defense wants to strike the death penalty because of Brian Kohberger's autism / mental deficiency. It's definitely a mitigating factor, right? And if Brian Kohberger is convicted and they go into the penalty phase, this will be a huge part of it. We saw not autism, but the mental deficiency and the issues with some mental health disorders that the Parkland shooter case, when they had the penalty phase, that was a big part of the case. That's a big part of a lot of penalty phase trials and mitigation and aggravation. So that's absolutely something that's going to be allowed in that sense. But will this be something that the judge actually strikes the death penalty as, cruel and unusual for somebody that doesn't understand what's going on, doesn't understand right and wrong, the charges against him? It's not an insanity plea, but it has some of the same similar characteristics that we don't want to do. We don't want the death penalty to be in effect for people that have these mental defects and don't understand really what's going on, because we basically see it as cruel and unusual. Now, here's the issue with that. Here's the issue the state's going to argue, and the issue I kind of have with it at this point. Defense attorneys are going to defense attorney, right? They're going to do their job. They're going to fight hard. That is their job. They should use every rule and law and precedent they think that is positive for their client and that they need to do to fight for their client's rights. Okay? So we'll start with that. So no beef with filing a motion like this. But in cases where I've seen this be successful, in the penalty phase or at this phase, or even in an insanity defense in other states that have things a little bit different than Idaho, usually they don't quite present like Brian Kohberger, who presents as somebody that looks normal, which obviously we know that doesn't mean anything, especially when dealing with mental health, but also has an experience, education that would lead you to believe if he's high functioning on that scale. And I hesitate to really do any of this. I'm not an expert in this stuff. They're going to have experts testify. I'm just telling you what usually comes out. The ones that are successful Usually, I will say it is obvious to a layperson like me that they have a deficiency that is obvious in this situation and would make this cruel and unusual. Okay. That's not to say that pain doesn't present the same in everybody, that mental health disorders or deficiencies don't present the same in everybody. So I'm not diagnosing Brian Kohberger with anything. I'm not even saying what the experts are going to say, right? They're going to come and they're going to testify before the judge before he makes his decision, probably, or he's just going to read their reports. But it would be surprising for somebody that presents like Brian Kohberger has so far. And especially they dress him up, they make him look professional, presentable. Now, in the motion, they discuss he's direct, he makes weird eye contact. The media and people have already said he's creepy or looks creepy. He doesn't have the right affect or response to certain things, basically saying he will make a bad witness. I was surprised at how much detail they went into the fact that they said that he would make such a bad witness. And people basically generally won't like him, and jurors probably won't like him, and the public doesn't like him or won't like him. That's kind of what it felt like to me, which leads me to think he probably is not going to take the stand and testify, right? That's probably what I felt. And by the way, all these mental health disorders, a lot of them are on a spectrum, and the spectrum is important. I'm not saying spectrum specifically for autism, but spectrum is important, dealing with the severity of it or not, when we are discussing things like, should you remove the death penalty or not? Do they understand what's going on or not? Because you can have mental deficiencies, defects, mental health disorders, whatever you want to call them, and still absolutely understand what you're doing, the gravity of what you're doing. It's not a deficiency even having autism. I get it, and I'm trying to choose my words carefully when dealing with mental health issues. But my point is, just because you have something or are diagnosed with something does not mean it's going to have the same effect as other things. Certain ones are delineated, certain ones are not. Okay. What do I think is going to happen? I do not think Judge Hippler is going to strike the death penalty based on this, but that's a total guess without knowing what the experts are going to say. And my mind could absolutely be changed depending on what the mental health experts say on either side. Okay. So that was issue number 2. Judge always makes me think of Arrested Development mock trial with Judge Reinhold. Thanks for all the great streams. I am a fan of Arrested Development. I've been waiting patiently for this coverage, Peter. A nice break from the Reed trial. Does the other DNA give the jury reasonable doubt? Love you. So I would say on its own, it's going to be up to how the defense uses it. This is a breath of fresh air too. I never thought the Brian Kohberger case would be a breath of fresh air, but it is to be digging into something a little different, right? Than the Karen Reed case, which so much has been going on. And in a couple weeks, the trial is going to start and we're going to be elbows deep in it. So, but yeah, I think that this is something the defense is going to argue is reasonable doubt, that the other DNA is probably from somebody else if there were signs of struggle, because I think that the state's experts, and again, I'm trying to read between the lines on some of this, I think they are going to say there are defensive wounds that these victims fought. They did everything they could to prevent what was happening to them from happening, which would then line up with scratching, clawing, getting DNA under the fingernails. And if it's not Brian Kohberger, it's reasonable doubt. Do I think it's enough on its own? No, I really don't. But I think it can be something used in that. Off topic, are you doing a Donna update? Did something happen? I don't know. You guys have to send me documents, send me videos if something happens on Twitter, on Instagram. Yes, we're in on Donna Adelson. I'm going to try to follow Lori Vallow as well. These cases we've been following for literally years, as well as Karen Reed. My son has ASD. I do believe you hit the nail on the head. The education, et cetera, makes a difference. There's a lot of aspects. I don't pretend to know all of them. Therapist, hit that like button. Yes, please do. Hit the like button. I've seen people say they had to have deleted lines from the 911 call. Could this be true? Wouldn't it just be redacted? Every judge allows different things. Every lawyer does it differently. I would say usually when a document is redacted, you can see the redactions, but I don't want to say that's a bright line rule, black and white, that it would ever happen. Velo Ainge, was he diagnosed with autism when he was younger or growing up? I can't remember if they mentioned that in the motion. I don't have the motion up in front of me. I cannot remember if they mentioned that. Susan, thanks for gifting memberships. Okay, now let's get into the 911 transcript, which is something that was redacted, which happened hours and hours after the crime was committed, hours and hours after the text message exchange that we're going to read. But let's take a look now at this 911 transcript. And I want to look at these just because, like, for my edification, for your edification, to understand kind of what I'm trying to learn, is how will each side use this? What can be proven? Because I tend to find 911 calls, contemporaneous text messages, and things that happened at the time before people had a chance to plan and change things, et cetera, et cetera. I tend to find them more reliable. So these 911 calls, I think, are helpful in helping us get a timeline and facts and things like that. All right, 911, location of your emergency. Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what. We have, what is the address of the emergency? 1122, no, don't. By the way, you'll see multiple people talk to them on the phone. What is the rest of the address? Oh, Kings Road. Okay. And is that a house or an apartment? It's a house. I've heard people saying that this doesn't seem like they're stressed or they're freaking out. Difficult to tell reading a transcript, right? Sometimes you'll see a lot of unintelligibles once people are freaking out, but we'll be able to tell that when we actually hear it played in trial. So I'm not going to jump to that conclusion at this point. Okay. And is that a house or apartment? It's a house. Can you repeat the address to make sure I have it right? I'll talk out. This A1 takes the phone. I'll talk to you guys. We live at the right, so we're next to them. I saw people saying that this is a neighbor. I need someone to repeat the address. The address 1122 King Road. And what's the phone number if you're calling from? What's your phone number? Okay, and that's obviously redacted. Okay, and tell me exactly what's going on. One of the roommates, so our to the roommates, who's passed out. She was drunk last night and she's not waking up. So freaking out or not, I don't know. I can't tell from text. But being there, thinking someone's passed out from being drunk the night before, to me is just a hard thing logically for me to connect. This is hours and hours later. Okay. We're going to read the text messages as well. And they think she's passed out from being drunk. And we're going to read, and they know she's not breathing anymore. Why did they think that? Why did they not know what happened? The way the scene has been described to us, which again, we have not gotten the details that we're going to get at trial. We have not gotten all of the information. To me, this was something that was a little mind-boggling to me. And there's more. That's just really surprising. No, we saw, okay. Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah. Again, hours later, they saw a man in their house last night. They said there was crying and heavy heaving, and that's what I would expect. Again, I just can't read it in a transcript, so I don't know. And why are they only calling about one and not the other? Did they not look at the other rooms? That's something else that's tough for me. Like a lot of questions, right? And that's why when these surviving roommates and neighbors get on the stand, there's going to be a lot of questions to fill some holes. Maybe the defense already knows a lot of this information. We don't as the public. I assume it's going to come out in trial. Are you with the patient? So if they think she's, by the way, if they think she's passed out from being drunk, they saw some man in their house last night. Why is that important if you think somebody's passed out from being drunk? Maybe they drugged them. I don't know. Are you with the patient? Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, stop passing it around. Can I just tell you what happened pretty much? What's going on currently? Is someone passed out? I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m. Okay, I need to know what's going on right now. If someone is passed out, can you find out? Yeah, I'll come. Come on. We got to go check. But we have to, is she passed out? She's passed out. What's wrong? Dispatching Moscow Law ambulance for, she's not waking up. Unconsciousness, 1122 King Road. 70 is en route. Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way. Okay, maybe unintelligible, 1122 King Road. All ambulance respond for unconscious, 1122 King Road. I copy, unintelligible, 58, multiple RPs. On the phone, advised saying roommate on scene is passed out, not waking up. Believe she got drunk last night, and something about a male being in the room with them, being around. That one, I copy, 20-year-old female unconscious trying to get further. Copy, yeah, it's Evan. Okay. And how old is she? She's 20. 20, you said. Yes. 20 here. Do you want to talk to him? Okay. Hello, hello. Okay. I need someone to stop passing the phone around because I have talked to 4 different people. Okay. Sorry. They just gave me the phone. Is she breathing? Hello. Is she breathing? No. Okay. En route. Bethany or Dylan, I need you to talk to them. Okay. I can't talk to them. I need you to talk to them. Okay. Hello. Okay. I've already sent the ambulance and law enforcement. Stay on the line. Okay. If there is a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it. Units responding, RPs advising the patient is not conscious, not breathing. Okay. If there's a defibrillator available, send someone to get it now and tell me when you have it. We don't have one. Unconscious, not breathing. Do you have a defibrillator? Yep. Yes, we have one. But are you talking to the officer? Yes. Okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you. Okay, thank you. Bye. Okay, Moscow 46 out. Copy. 13, I think we have a homicide. Moscow engine 20 is en route. 13, 70, 70, unintelligible. 107, I related. Brings up more questions than answers to me. Okay. It really brings up more questions than answers to me. Maria said Donna is denied bail and the jail calls are coming in. Okay. No surprise with the denied bail, but we will check it out. I think that one of the callers saw the bodies and didn't want to freak the girls out and just said passed out to keep the girls from spiraling. I guess if they knew that there was nothing that could be done, but that's really dumb to not give all of the full information to 911 and people sending help to help you. Should have walked into another room and whispered what was going on. That doesn't make sense to me either. DJ, how does Q1 know the age before the 911 operator asks? Line 111, is it possible the transcript is out of order? Okay, copy 20-year-old female. I see, so it's asked afterwards. All right, Q and Q1. Let me see who's Q and Q1. Q is dispatch. Q1 is a man. I don't know. It's a good question. She's 20. I don't know. Thank you, Maria, for gifting 5 memberships. Okay, so let's now get to the text messages. Oops, did I have that right already? All right, so this is in the state's motion in limine, and we're going to read it here. Actually, see, we have a big one from Netwoman. What's up, Netwoman? People can't judge other state of minds when there's fear. 100% agree. Your brain tries to protect you and you don't think logically. It's one of those situations where I always say, you don't know what you do until you were there. I hope you're never there. I can relate after an armed robbery. You don't know who else might be still in the enclosed area nearby before I read the last line. And we know there was drinking involved, potentially drugs. It was late at night when we're going to read the text messages. They just wake up when we hear the 911 calls. Just so much going on. Also super young, right? They're not adults. They're not going to deal with it like adults. I know they're over 18, but they're still kids in college. Last, did you catch Lori Vallow on Dateline? Poor Keith. I haven't caught it yet, but I definitely will. Yes, Lori Vallow going on Dateline. Oh boy, I can't imagine what that's going to be like. Thank you again, Netwoman, for the super chat. Okay. DM's phone records contained in Exhibit S1 for November 13th, 2022, and BF's testimony contained as S2 as to what DM told her should be allowed at trial. In the case at bar, starting on November 13th at 2:10 a.m., DM sends a text message to EG, the Uber driver, to inquire if he's driving. The state submits this text message exchange is not hearsay because it will not be offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Instead, it will be offered to show a timeline for the night. DM was awake at 2:10. DM attempts to call BF, Xana Kernodle, Kaylee Goncalves, and Madison Mogan, all calls unanswered. The records of these calls are not hearsay as they each do not meet the definition of a statement, oral assertion, written assertion, or nonverbal conduct intended as an assertion. I think the judge is going to let these text messages in for one reason or another. Okay, from 422 to 424, DM and BF send the following text messages. DM to BF, no one is answering. DM to BF. I'm really confused right now. DM to Goncalves. Kaylee, DM to Goncalves. What's going on? BF to DM. Yeah, dude, WTF. BF to DM. Xana was wearing all black. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Number one, it seems like they knew something was weird was happening with Kaylee. They're texting her. What's going on? The other weird thing is Xana Kernodle, who is not built like Brian Kohberger, they say Xana was wearing all black. That's weird, right? Can I make it larger? I can make it a little bit larger. I think it's probably just blurry on your screen. Don't worry. I'm going to read every single text message. But they say Xana was wearing all black. On the 911 call, they said a man was wearing all black. Again, absolutely something the defense is going to hammer away. They're going to hammer away at everybody's credibility, especially people that were drinking the night before, people that are young, people that were in the house. Absolutely. To me, and we're going to hear what Kaylee Goncalves' dad and lawyer think about this, it feels like it exonerates them unless they're like criminal masterminds. They don't know what's going on. They're saying all sorts of stuff that doesn't make sense. I'm freaking out right now. No, it's like ski mask almost. STFU. Shut the F up. Actually, which in the slang is, are you being serious? Like seriously? DM to BF. Like he had something over his forehead and little ND mouth. So now, clearly saying he and speaking about a guy, not Xana. So I think this is where people are thinking maybe some text messages are redacted. I don't know. We will probably find out eventually. But the definition of, I don't know, not the definition. Sorry, I read another comment. But we don't know at this point if anything was redacted or cut out. I would think we would be able to see it, but I don't know. I'm not kidding. I am so freaked out. So am I. My phone is going to die. F. BF to DM. Come to my room. BF to DM. Run. BF to DM down here. Again, 4 a.m., hours before they call 911. There's fear. They're young. What should they have done? People are going to condemn them for it. I get it. The defense is definitely going to discuss how this is suspect. These are all going to be things that are dealt with in this case. No doubt about it. Wait, they do or they don't have a defibrillator? Sounded like they said they didn't, and then they said they did. Sumo, I have high functioning autism, but present as normal, and without a doubt, it makes it a lot harder for others to understand how it can affect my life. So Sue, you don't have to answer this at all whatsoever. With that definition of it yourself and your own description, would you understand right from wrong in a situation like this? Would you understand if you committed these acts, which Brian Kohberger is not saying he did, he's not admitting he did, but they're saying even if he did, if a jury convicts him, he does not understand right and wrong and what the parameters are and how it'll affect them and what he was actually doing and how serious this is and what the death penalty is. Do you understand that or not? Do you understand the gravity of that or not? Those are some of the questions that they're going to get into. All right. All of the above declarations are present sense impressions and excited utterances. This is supported by DM's grand jury testimony where she indicates she just witnessed a startling event, heard noises in the residence, and saw an unknown male in the residence. The declarations indicate both BF and DM are trying to make sense of the startling event. Contemporaneously or immediately following the startling event, no time for reflection or fabrication. DM's grand jury testimony is attached as Exhibit S3. DM calls Ethan Chapin, call unanswered at 4:24, so right after those texts. This phone record, like the other records of the calls, is not a statement pursuant to IRE 801A. DM and BF continue to text at 4:24:58. DM text BF, I'm scared though. I think that means scared. I think they're going to talk about how maybe these are drunk texts, and that's why there are so many typos potentially. And they're going to try to get into how it lacks credibility, their statements, the defense. BF responds at 4:25. Yeah, I know, but it's better than being alone. Again, they're discussing running down to their room. Again, both statements are admissible as present sense impressions and excited utterances as they are describing an event or their state of mind and are spontaneous reactions to that event rather than the result of reflective thought. 427, DM calls Goncalves. To me, again, unless they're criminal masterminds, they're like, what the heck's going on? Calling all the victims saying something is weird. What's going on? Even in their frame of mind that they were not completely with it, they were impaired, still knowing something's happening, trying to get a hold of them. Now, what they did next is strange to me, waiting to call 911, but I think we'll get into that. At 427, calls to Goncalves unanswered. At 428, DM calls Kernodle unanswered. These are not statements. DM sends a text message to Goncalves. Please answer. This statement is present sense impression, shows DM's perception of the events and an excited utterance, spontaneous reaction to that rather than the result of reflective thought. Now, again, you can also think it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Maybe in the back of their mind, they're like, I hope we're just freaking out. I hope we're just being paranoid. They're probably asleep because most people in the world are asleep at 4:30 in the morning. Then the next morning, so from 4 to 10, DM sends the following text message starting at 10:23. To Goncalves, please answer. To Mogan, are you up? To Goncalves, are you up? So that leads me to believe that maybe they did just at the end of the night be like, let's just go to bed and chill. They're probably asleep. Which leads me to think, what did they hear and see? Again, party house, friends coming in and out, maybe a guy dressed in all black. Wasn't that weird? Maybe that's, they've seen that before. So they just decided to go to bed and not wake up their roommates. It seems like if you really heard something concerning, you really heard weird voices screaming, whatever it may be, it's probably worth it to go wake up your roommate, right? Easy for us to say, hindsight's 2020, much more difficult to say at the time. DM is the only one that saw the man. BF is missing punctuation, like, couldn't it have been X? She was in all black. DM also said in an interview she had lucid dreams and didn't know if it was all real. So that is something that I think does happen. I wonder if the state will have an expert discussing all that, or if the defense will have it was hallucination, whatever, and she's trying to fit it into place after she heard what other people are saying. I don't know. These text messages are not hearsay because they will not be introduced for the truth of the matter asserted. Even if deemed hearsay, they are allowable as present sense impressions as they reflect a consistency and continuation of DM's text messages from the night prior and reflect her then perception of what was then occurring. At 11:39, okay, so again, they're up and texting at 10. DM has a text exchange with her father, BM. These statements are not hearsay as they will not be introduced for the truth of the matter asserted, but instead to show a timeline from the morning. At 11:55, DM receives a text message from Jay stating, bro, this text message will not be introduced for the truth of the matter asserted. At 11:50, DM calls EA. This phone record is not a statement pursuant to IRE 801. DM receives a text message from Jay at 11:51 and a vandal alert at 1:04. These text messages are not hearsay because they will not be introduced for the truth of the matter asserted, instead show a timeline for the morning. So again, if I'm going to sit here and guess, which is part of what this is, I think Judge Hippler will allow this in. I also think it will be evidence that the defense will use in the case. And it will not be something that just the state uses. Moni, is investigation stopped after suspect is charged? Usually it goes into prosecuting him is where the resources go. Especially if they find information that they believe they have the right guy, they believe they can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, and they believe in this case that he acted alone and the evidence points he acted alone, they're probably not going to keep searching through for other suspects at that point. That's usually how it's done, but I won't say always. All right. How could she hear whimpering but not hear the screaming and fighting? Again, there's a lot of things I just don't know. And I haven't given guesses to this answer because I just don't know. I do think these will be things that are hit hard on cross. There's a lot of information we don't know, and there's a lot of fodder for cross, I believe, in this case. But there are certain pieces of evidence, like if they're going to be able to put before the jury, which I think they are, white car, case in the joint, matches Kohberger's, phone has been around the joint, and it turned off just on these hours, and the description matches Kohberger, and his DNA is matching on the sheath. That type of stuff, even if you don't think it's reliable, going in front of most lay people and most jurors is going to be very effective, which, if presented well and not picked apart, could be enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt for most jurors. BRO means be right over, possibly. Good point. Good point. It's always tough with acronyms and shorthand these days with these young kids. Okay. Let's now get to a Brian Enton segment where he had Goncalves' father, who's on the left in the hat, and Shannon Gray, who's the Goncalves family attorney, on. And we will see what they have to say about this new information being unredacted, released, asked for, trying to get in, and what they think about the investigation, cops, etc.
No, we didn't hear a word, and my wife has said from the very beginning, when the hopefully the 911 never came out, and if it did come out, at least she would have, be some prepared. She has a counselor, she has people she could talk to. There's certain things that coping mechanisms. So we'd like for the advocate or somebody to kind of let us know what's going on, rather than nothing personal, but having the media tell you is probably not the same as having somebody that, that you've learned to have a relationship and you trust and you've worked with. So yeah, we're finding out just like everyone else. So
that seems not great, right? And it seems like par for the course that the victims, at least the Goncalves family, are not happy with how the prosecutors and the investigators are handling this case. They didn't let them know this was happening. It's weird to me that Shannon Gray wouldn't know this was happening before it happened. But they can only be as involved as law enforcement and the state allows them to be, and what their rights are. A concerned citizen said, LOL, damn, so Peter hasn't been reading the motions as of late, huh? So let me know which ones you want to hear, right? There was about 50 things filed, I think, since the last time I did a video. I probably read 20. There are some that I haven't read, some orders to seal and motions to seal and things like that. So, and I know that there are issues with the white car, and the defense doesn't want it to be allowed in, phone records, etc. So if you guys have questions about specific documents, most of the questions were about the DNA, the 911 calls, and the text messages. So that's really what I focused on, and the autism. So if you guys have questions about specific documents, please send them to me on X/Twitter, on Instagram, and what your questions are. And if a lot of people are asking about similar documents, I'll read the whole document like I've done in the past. I'll dig in deeper, but I wanted to try to hit as much of this today as I could to give a full Kohberger update and some of the big key things that I'm guessing what Hippler's going to believe or allow. I think Hippler's going to allow the state to get into a lot of their evidence trying to prove Brian Kohberger was casing the joint, whether it's car, phone, etc. Sleuthy, what up? Speaking of all the documents on this case, let Sleuthy know what questions you have for me. And I'm sure she'd be happy to send whatever documents everybody's asking about, or she probably already knows because they're asking her about a lot of the documents in the case. So yeah, I'm hitting as much as I can. Obviously can't hit everything that's happened in this case up until now. But the victim's family, at least the Goncalveses, are very unhappy with how this was handled and let out.
It's a bit rough.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. And I remember that you had a meeting with them months ago, and I thought they were going to sort of give you guys a heads up when things were going to be released publicly. And I guess that didn't happen in this case, which is unfortunate. Is there anything, Steve, that, I mean, obviously the horror is what stands out to me, but was there anything in the text of the text messages or the call that really struck you?
What struck me is, it's not like Hollywood. It's not a scripted thing. It's not like what you would see on a TV set. That was a raw, emotional breakdown of two girls that were scared for their life. There's part of me that knows that, like how that house was, there's a lot of pranking going on. There's a lot of partying. So there's part of them that was probably thinking, is this a prank? Am I getting messed with? I know for a fact my daughter loved pranking people. So my heart goes out to those two girls. I'd have a hard time if I was one of their parents to have my daughter put through what they've been put through. I mean, we sat 2.5 years on what? Why did this need to be hidden from the public? Why did these girls?
I agree. It's kind of weird that it was hidden from the jump. And if you thought you needed to do it for the victim/witness protection, why did that stop now? Was that a difference in judge opinion? That's interesting because we see 911 calls come out all the time. That Peachy Cass. Hi, Laura. So glad to catch you live from Sydney, Australia. Thank you for all you do in your coverage on these cases. Welcome in from down under. Down under? That sounded like British. I'm not an accent person.
Girls have to be dragged through all this. These are the type of things that why I do these interviews and why we push back a little bit, because I think a lot of people are questioning right now why this was hidden.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I want to also say, so the prank thing, I think that might come up for the defense. I think that might be an angle for the defense. Great coverage, Peter. We all want something different. Thank you, Kathy. I didn't mean anything negative by it. Seriously, if there's something you want me to cover, try to, talk about it on Twitter, Instagram. And if a lot of people are interested, I'm happy to do it. Like, absolutely. You guys drive the bus here. I don't know. Maybe I drive the bus. You guys build the bus and I just drive it. Why is Xana's apparel so important in that moment in time? I wonder. I was thinking, was she confusing it with Kohberger, number one? Number two, maybe we used to have like parties in college where everybody would dress a certain way, a certain theme. Maybe there was a party that night where everybody was dressed in black. I don't know. I'm just making that up. I think it could be important. I think it could be important, or it could just be a mistake, or it could just be a clarifying question with some of the other text messages redacted. I think he brings up a good point. It's not Hollywood. Even the screaming many assume occurred might not have been. It was fast and terrifying. Yeah. Real life, real cases, real lawyering is very rarely quite like Hollywood, right?
And it's been years and none of this is coming out until now. And now the judge has said that he wants more of this to become public. But Steve makes a good point. I mean, if this had just come out within the first couple of months, maybe it would have been easier on the survivors and the victims' families like the Goncalves.
Yeah, I mean, the prosecution's choice in keeping everything under wraps has been a decision that they've made from the get-go. They haven't wavered from it in any way. That being said, I mean, for lack of a better term, I'm just pissed. Common decency should have the Latah County prosecutor's office and the victims' advocates contact myself and the victims' families and let them know some of the stuff that's coming down and is being filed. So they're not just surprised by it, and just have a really just honest conversation with us about it.
And here's one thing that I, agree and disagree with him. I mean, he speaks for the family and he said they're pissed and they didn't even have the common decency to tell us, right? So they are not happy with the prosecutors. No doubt about it. To me, I get it. And I agree with him by the fact that this is so easy. Send an email saying, hey, we wanted to let you know the judge is doing this. Nothing we can do. It's a judge's decision, judicial discretion. We've been trying to keep as much private as possible so that there's not all this media hype on it, but there's nothing more we could do. I've sent clients letters like that or emails like that where it's like, hey, I know you didn't want this to happen. The judge is making this call. I just wanted to let you know. And I know they're not the client of the state, but why is that so hard? And that is just common decency. But when he says stuff like have a conversation about it or discuss it or whatever, it's like, there are certain things you can't do as a victim or a victim's lawyer. You can't force certain things. You can't control certain things. So it's not always like you're going to be in the decision-making process, but they should be involved and they should definitely be kept up to speed and they should be told everything that's going on in the case, everything that happens in the case. Why is that not something that happens? Is that hard? Is it really that hard? Because I don't think it is. I know right from wrong because society tells me, but don't usually understand why, as I can't empathize with others or their pain. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Sumo. Always interesting to learn, people. And this is what I love about people bringing different, diverse thoughts and backgrounds into this. We all bring our own experiences, expertise, knowledge, what we're good at, what we're bad at, where we excel, where we're deficient, whatever it may be, and where we just see things differently. I love learning like that. It's just how my brain works. All right, let's keep listening.
But none of that happens. And I'm frustrated and I'm pissed for myself and the family that I don't have a chance to explain those things to them, to give them a little bit of a heads up on, hey, these motions are filed this way and they may or may not be successful. If it is successful, who cares? Doesn't affect the case in some way, or my opinion on whether or not those motions might be filed or might be successful or not. But it's just really, really frustrating.
Yeah, it could even take them less time because Shannon Gray's as a mediator, basically, they can shorthand it to him and be like, hey, here's what happened. Can you explain it to the family? And then he can go and have the hour-long conversation with the family. So it takes even less time out of the day for the state attorney to be able to do that. I just don't understand. To me, in my mind, this is totally just based off experience, what I'm feeling from the process and kind of guessing, it ain't a good relationship between the victims and the state in this case. And that's not good. And it shouldn't be like that. And you shouldn't want that. It's really not a good thing. And that is frankly on the state to correct and make sure it's not like that. Not the victims going through this for the first time, going through literally the worst time of their entire life. And the state is doing their job. It's difficult. It's stressful for lawyers, but we are doing our jobs. We are not feeling it like the client who's actually going through whatever it is we're representing them for. Thank you, Netwoman, for gifting 5 memberships.
And I know Steve and Christy are frustrated by it, but I'm the one that gets to say, I'm pissed, and I'm pissed for everybody. So.
Yeah, and I mean, even if they can't give you the documents ahead of time, it seems like they could at least give you a heads up to tell the family, hey, maybe don't watch the news for an hour. Give me a second to go through these and call you. It seems like that would be a sort of a decent thing to do. Steve, what do you make of this latest motion where they're trying to ban words from coming out during trial? I mean, simple words like that are part of the case: murder, bushy eyebrows, sociopath, psychopath. Did this come as a surprise, Steve?
So funny enough, my dad and I have actually filed at least one motion like this in other cases, in another case. And we got granted on some of them, but not others. And only certain people could use certain words, right? Like sociopath, psychopath, like you have to be a mental health expert or something, and you have to give the background before you use a word like that. Bushy eyebrows is a descriptive word. So I don't know how you keep that out. And the M word is the charge in the case. So I don't know how you keep that out, but maybe you limit certain things that are inflammatory, but there are some ways to keep certain words out, or at least keep certain words out of certain witnesses' mouths. So it's not crazy. It's not way out there. It's not totally outlandish. It's not usually successful as well. Just FYI.
Yeah, I thought they'd have a sadistic on there from the profile that I know that they've made of him. Some of the websites that he's been to.
Interesting nugget to throw out there to the public. Sadistic from the profile I know they've made of Brian Kohberger for websites he's been to. Not great. That's the type of stuff that shouldn't be shared publicly because it could really poison a jury pool. Like if you're listening to this and you're like, what? They built a profile? I've watched TV shows. They build profiles on these people. They said he's sadistic. Why do they think he's sadistic? Oh, because of the websites he's visited. So if all of that is legitimate evidence, they will prove it with his computer search. And if those searches are connected to what he did, then it becomes relevant. It's probative. They'll be able to share it if it's legitimate and reliable. But if it's not, stuff like that coming out, I hate to see that. I hate to see that. And I'll never blame any victims or victims' parents for what they're going through. I can't imagine how they even think straight and get on and put their clothes on every morning. It's brutal. I feel for them. I feel like Mr. Goncalves has been incredibly strong and pushing, what I truly believe everything he does and says he thinks is best for his daughter and his family. So I get it. I just, from my perspective as a lawyer, I wish stuff like that wouldn't come out.
That
publicly before the trial. If it's evidence in trial, fair game.
Was a one that rated really high with him. So I'm a little surprised they didn't put that word on there. But when you're super desperate, you really have nothing, you attack words and simple things like that. They're really done. They're
so to me, he has moved a little on the spectrum, right? Because earlier on, it was kind of like, we want to see justice prevail. We hope they got the right guy. We hope they're able to go in and prove he's guilty. He seems 100% certain Brian Kohberger is the guy, and he's going to say it, right? And that's clearly the corner he stands in at this point. Seems like he's not very fond of the prosecutors, but even more, really, really hates or I shouldn't say hates, really does not like or respect the defense attorneys or what they're doing in this case. That's what it feels like.
Client has left so much evidence that they've got to attack words. So I guess it's a sign. It's a sign of what's to come, and hopefully the state, the prosecution, strong enough to see this all the way through and not give in to the desperation that's about to come and the plea deals that they're going to try to negotiate for.
Thanks for watching. Go to join and.
All right. So no punches pulled there. So we get it. Future said, don't they have victims advocates in Idaho? What about Marcy's law? Is that only certain states, or do the parents of the deceased not qualify as party to be notified? So again, every state's a little different, but just because you're a party to be notified doesn't mean you're notified about everything, right? Every state's a little bit different with that. I believe they do have victims advocates. I think he mentioned it in this, and I'm pretty sure he's mentioned it in other videos that we've broken down. So yes, they do, but the frustrating part, because again, I've sat in Shannon Gray's shoes before and represented family members of deceased victims, and while the criminal case is going on, and I'm representing them in a civil case, and we're kind of following along parallel to what's happening in the criminal case. They work for the state. They're government employees that are sometimes overworked and underpaid. They don't always get to it. Sometimes things happen where they don't know when a judge's order is going to come in. The judge's order comes in and they didn't tell us about it, and they'll apologize. They try to set up an appointment, and they set up the appointment after the time that something happens because of schedules, and they don't tell us, hey, something's going to happen on this day, so the appointment needs to be before that day. So there's unfortunately a lot of reasons why it doesn't always get through unless you're sure and you make sure it gets through. And if you're the prosecutor, who this is probably the only case some of these prosecutors are working on, you need to make sure it gets through. It is that important for these victims' families. That's my opinion. Sorry, I don't know how to find the documents. Thank you for all you do, and team you cover. And team do you cover. Yeah, no worries. Again, if you can find them, or if you have a tweet that references a document, share that tweet or tag me in that tweet. I see you guys doing that. I appreciate it. I love it. So yeah, don't worry about it if you don't know how to. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Okay. We did it in under an hour. We're back on track, folks. I'm not sure what else we're going to be doing this week. So you guys let me know what you want to hear, what you want read, what you want watched, broken down. You know where to find me, at Lawyer You Know on Twitter /X, at Tragos Law on Instagram. Make sure you like this video. If you haven't already, share it with anybody following Kohberger. I want to go through and read the comments in the chat on what you guys are saying. Whenever I read documents, sometimes it's a little harder to follow the chat, but I appreciate you so much for coming and joining me here. Hit the like button if you're still interested in this Kohberger case as well. I don't think Ethan has been seen yet. He was on the other side of the bed bleeding out, and they haven't been upstairs yet. Focus was on Xana. Again, they were texting Kaylee at 4 o'clock. So there was obviously some kind of concern with Kaylee, right? I mean, it's the whole timeline is strange to me. I don't want to jump to any conclusions. But I think we're going to just learn so many details at trial. That's where I'm firmly standing at this point with this case. So, all right. I appreciate you guys. Till next time, I'm officially out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.